Thursday, November 20th. Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube, where if you have questions for us, you can ask them. Or if you have questions for our insider, David Pagnotta, he'll be joining us for our big segment later on. Drop those into the YouTube chat. The show, as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Hutz, how you doing on a Thursday?
I'm doing well. You know what I mean? The week's buzzing along here. A lot of storylines, a lot of games, a lot of action. I know we're going to get into it today, but buddy, things just seem crazy right now in the NHL. Feels like it's flipped on its ear. I think a lot of predictions and a lot of forecasting this summer and early in the preseason have not gone as planned here, Ty.
No, the first 6 weeks of the season here have been pretty surprising. We're probably due to update our inner circle and outer circle Stanley Cup contenders, and I would imagine there will be a lot of movement when we get around to that. But let's kick things off with some breaking news from yesterday in the NHL. No matter how you're feeling on a Thursday afternoon, you're not feeling as good as Adam Lowry, the 32-year-old Jets captain, has his extension with the franchise. It's a 5-year deal worth $5 million a year. A nice, simple negotiation, 5-by-5. But the Jets have their captain locked up. And you know what, Hutz? We'll start with this. It's another one of those narrative killers. It's another American-born player who signed long-term in Winnipeg.
It's great. It's great for that team, right? It's a guy, you talk about the likes of Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele. Name was eluding me there because I wanted to add Adam Lowry in there. But the fact is, these are guys that want to be in Winnipeg. And for so long, this organization has had trouble and that stamp on them that nobody wants to be in Winnipeg. No one wants to stay there long term. And again, he's not overly productive when it comes to his offense, a career high 16 goals. And again, he creates a lot with his body, with his size. But it's also the leadership that he brings to the table for this team. So this is a huge add, in my opinion. Another staple when you look at those other players that they're going to be good for a long time to come. Now it's just for them adding around the perimeter, adding depth and where they can. And again, we were going over the numbers earlier. These are a lot of good players in this lineup locked up for good for the Winnipeg Jets. So the future looks very bright in Winnipeg here, Ty.
Yeah, on Adam Lowry, again, he's a guy who his individual numbers will never jump off the page to you. He's never put up more than 40 points in an NHL season, but the proof is in how good the Jets are when he's on the ice. These are the last 3 years for Lowry at 5-on-5. This year, he's been banged up, but the score's 4-0 with him on the ice at 5-on-5 this year. Last year, 34-21. Year before that, 38-21. You're plus 13, plus 17 with this guy on the ice at 5-on-5. And this isn't someone who's, playing 9 minutes a game and playing the other team's fourth line. This is someone who Scott Arniel and before that Paul Maurice trust to take on the other team's best players. And what does that do? If you have this guy eating tough matchups, putting up these numbers, then it frees up Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele and all those other guys to go out there and play an easier matchup at 5-on-5. The domino effect of having him in the Jets lineup, it's so important. You can see why they wanted to get it done. And for a guy like Lowry to get another $25 million as someone who was a third-round pick back in 2011, that's a nice little chunk of change to stay in a spot where you're valued too, right? I think, if Adam Lowry wanted to go chase a payday this summer, he might have wound up in a spot where it doesn't work as well. So you can see why this made sense for both sides.
You know what? Sometimes, Ty, I think one point that you said there was the trust factor comes into play, which is very important when you're not an overly skilled guy, right? Where, if you're a goal scorer, you can really just change environments quickly and you fit in. So for his role and where his value is almost off the rink at times in that leadership role. So sometimes if you were to change organizations that you haven't been in, now all of a sudden you have to rebuild everything you've built off the rink, which doesn't come as easy in free agency, where when you are a free agent and you just score or you produce on the power play or a goalie, it's a little simpler. Where you're kind of a role player going somewhere where you're trusted and you're loved. It's very important. So I don't think the dollar value might not have aligned up for him as much as it would have if he went to free agency. And again, a guy like that, for him, the security is a good factor. He's played in over 700 games now. That will probably push him over 1,000 if he stays healthy. That's pretty amazing for a guy, like you said, a third rounder who's never really been a household name, Ty.
Yeah. So never mind the fact that Scheifele and Velarde and Connor and now Lowry, throw Hellebuck into the mix. All those guys are signed for at least the next 5 seasons. Neil Pionk as well. But let's just talk about the next couple of years here for the Winnipeg Jets. If the cap shoots up to $107 million, the Jets are going to have $28 million in cap space. And Pat, I don't know if you still have the DFO lines up that we could flash up, but you look at all the pieces that are locked up. again, I mentioned the key names, but Niederreiter, Iafallo still signed. Perfetti's an RFA. They'll get him done. Nemesnikov is signed. Morgan Barron. They have 8 forwards under contract for next season. You go to the blue line, and Pionk, Morrissey, Sandberg, DeMello, the top 4 locked up. They have Hayden Fleury, too. Like, they're going to have $28 million. And, after they give $1.5 million to Eric Comrie to keep him around, they can go long-term with Perfetti, and they'll still have like probably $19 million to improve this roster. And, they're not a team who can boast a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid or go down the list for some of the other teams, but they have a boatload of talent. They have the potential to build themselves into an even deeper roster as we go forward. And the comparison I kind of use now that all these guys are locked up, and I think this is a compliment, but are they maybe like Carolina West, where like they are never going to be the team who going into a year, everyone goes Stanley Cup favorite, top of the odds board. They're my sexy pick to win it all. But every year the Jets are going to give themselves a chance to get into the dance. And maybe they're just going to be every year one Connor Hellebuyck hot streak away from winning the Stanley Cup. Like, I like that they've set themselves up to just be the model of consistency for the next number of years.
I think that's a great assessment. Like the Carolina, again, they never wow you, right? When we look at that Central Division where it's at, it's just superstars galore across the West, right? This is just loaded with talent, guys that are game changers, game breakers. And for me, Kyle Connor is their guy, right? He is the guy that's going to produce the most offense in the sense of goal scoring and game changing capability. Mark Scheifele's right there as well, but they're not on that level of McDavid and McKinnon and these guys that are just absolute game breakers. Now we see Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, but that being said, the way that they're coached, the way that their depth is, their D, the way they defend, and then the X factor in Connor Hellebuyck gives them a chance every single night. And again, last year, he takes a lot of heat for the way that he played in the playoffs, but he was very good on the road. It was just that homestand where he couldn't seem, or he was great at home, couldn't get it done on the road. But maybe that changes, right? And he is the difference maker, how good he can be for this team, for the future. And it seems like he's only getting smarter, right? This is a guy that understands the position so well. He manages his output so well, so he doesn't really burn out. You see a lot of goalies, if they start to play more minutes, it wears into their playoff run. So I look for them to be smarter with him moving forward. But that being said, I don't see Connor Hellebuyck slowing down anytime soon, Ty.
No, and again, you kind of said it. His home road splits were wonky last year. I think it's just a matter of time before Connor Hellebuyck has a legendary 100%. Playoffs. Like, he's just too good of a goalie for it to just always be turning off come playoff times. It's one of those things that's obviously perplexed a lot of people around the hockey world, not just me. But let's move along and get to some of the results, or one of the results from last night, as the Washington Capitals, they just absolutely stomped the Edmonton Oilers, a 7-4 final, despite the fact, and look at those shot totals, Edmonton 30, Washington 21. This is a Capitals team that when they've been winning this year, it's been low-scoring games on the back of Logan Thompson being the best goalie in the NHL, which statistically he's been so far this year. But Edmonton manages to get 4 past Logan Thompson. For the Washington Capitals, the story for once was not Thompson. It was their offense. Ovi's heating up. He finds the back of the net. Tom Wilson scores 2 empty netters. Rookie Ryan Leonard contributes a couple as well. If this Washington offense wakes up, Huts, there's going to be no concerns in the United States Capitol.
No, it's an interesting time in Washington, right? Because I guess we've always waited for this like recession and where they're at. And I think last year they overachieved a bit. Logan Thompson's been so good, but it's a great example of they didn't have the Logan Thompson they've had all year, and they still find a way to generate offense with the least amount of shots that they've created in a year. So the other side of it is the Edmonton Oilers, right? We talk about where they're at. And again, I know Skinner takes a ton of heat, but their goaltending has been poor. Their defense has been poor. And even the games that they were winning, they had no business winning. So it is a bit concerning when you look at that numbers. And as Pat pulls it up here, you look at Calvin Pickard, right? I heard you the other day talking about what Jack Campbell's save percentage was when he was punted from the team. And Calvin Pickard is in danger of that too here. And I look at Stuart Skinner right now, team save percentage, 857, which is 32nd in the NHL. Oilers goals against at 80 is 32nd in the NHL. And 5-on-5 goals against at 58 is 32nd in the NHL. I don't care if you have McDavid and Draisaitl. It just goes to show you, if you can't defend, you can't keep the puck out of your net. This is the team sport. You can't win with just individuals. And they need to figure it out quickly here, Ty.
Yeah, they do. I mean, again, last night, a shining example of things. Like the Washington Capitals, that was just the fourth time this year that they've scored 4 or more goals at 5-on-5. It was only the second time this season that they scored 5-on-5 goals in a single game. And they did all that on a night where they had the fourth fewest 5-on-5 shots that they did in a game. Like they scored 5 goals on 19 5-on-5 shots last night. Like that, it's nothing more than goaltending for the Edmonton Oilers. Like there were moments where the Oilers defensively were not good last night. Every team is going to have moments where they're not good defensively. Washington did last night. The whole third period was played in Washington's end. And while Edmonton, yes, scored a couple, Washington also got 4 big saves, I think, from Logan Thompson, point blank on Ekholm late. The Oilers were running around in the third period, and Thompson stood solid. The Oilers couldn't say the same thing. So something's got to give. Edmonton's coming towards the end of a really, really long and gnarly road trip here. They play again tonight in Tampa Bay, and the expectation is that they're playing Calvin Pickard, which I think makes you wince a little bit. But listen, 9-9-4, that's just not good enough. And again, we're past the quarter-way mark of the season here. So something's got to give in Edmonton, Huts. I would not be the least bit surprised if they, by December 1, have a different goaltending duo. And maybe it's just calling up Connor Ingram from Bakersfield. They acquired him from Utah during or at the tail end of training camp. Maybe that's all it is, but something's got to give, because another night like last night, they just can't keep happening.
They can't. And again, we're not far removed from the Colorado Avalanche switching both their goalies in a season, right? It can happen. Things can change. And I guess I know there's a lot of dancing that has to go around to make that happen. But like you said, like when you see a Calvin Pickard start now, you're almost like nervous about it. And it feels like it's inevitable that they can't sustain, or they're going to have to score 5 or 6 goals to even stay in that race. So it is that. But on the other side of it, the Washington Capitals trending in the right direction. I had a little stat here. Ovi, 3 goals in 3 straight games now. So if he gets going, that's unbelievable. He's the first player over 40 years to do it since I asked this before. He was a teammate of mine, Matt Cullen. I thought that was an interesting one. You know, I don't think you really think of Matt Cullen when you put in that category. They played for a long, long time. But Ovi starts getting hot, the Caps start scoring. Look out, Ty.
Matt Cullen's one of those sneaky guys. When you go look at the all-time games played leaderboard in the NHL, he played the 22nd most games in the history of the league, 1,516. That's pretty impressive.
That is impressive too. I always used to joke where we'd be like working out in Nashville and he'd just be stretching. And that was his line to all the young boys. He said, stretch your body, stretch your career. And it's not lying when you look up those numbers.
Yeah. All right. We had a comment here from Willie, who's in here every day, and he goes, let's do a poll. Who gets more airtime, the Leafs or the Oilers? And hey, you're not going to like this next segment then, Willie, because we're doing a little this or that, but it makes sense because these are two teams who come into the year with Stanley Cup aspirations, who are both sitting at 500 right now. So we'll put it in the YouTube as a poll. I will ask it to you, a little this or that, Huts. Who's in more danger of missing the playoffs? It is the most low-hanging fruit amongst all hockey content questions, but who's more likely to miss the playoffs, the Oilers or the Leafs?
You know what? This is a really, really hard question, because you can make an argument for both teams and, firepower and where they're at. But I'm going to say that more likely to miss is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I just do not like what they've done there. I think their back end is slow. I don't think their goaltending is that good. And I just err on the side of there's more superstar status in Edmonton than there is in Toronto. Like with Leon and Connor, I just feel like they can will this team into the playoffs and they can find ways to get hot. And I feel like they're going to find a viable backup that can play if Skinner gets going. Skinner doesn't worry me because he's been through this so many times. It's like rinse and repeat. So I do feel like he will find a way to get streaky out of this. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, I sincerely worry that they just aren't a complete hockey team anymore with the way that they're built. And injury bugs, you can say what you want, but this is, I think I'm taking the Leafs to be the team to miss, Ty.
Yeah, and I like this comment from J-Rock. He says it has to be the Leafs based solely on the health of the team. And I mean, as much you'll say Connor and Leon can will them out of this. I think if you're a Leafs fan, you'd like to believe that Austin Matthews can do something to will you out of this slump, but Austin Matthews has to be in the lineup for him to will you out of a slump. So I think that's a big part of it here. Leafs 4th in goals this year, 31st in goals against. Again, they're getting the scoring and not winning, which is, I think, another reason to maybe be concerned. But we'll give the poll results after our big segment today. Before we get to Dave Pagnotta, though, I wanted to ask you another this or that question, and it'll tie into what we're leading with in our Insider Notebook as well. But by this time last year, Huts, we already had a handful of trades. You can argue about how big they were, but in October, you had Timothy Liljegren going to the Sharks. Olli Mata went to Utah from Detroit. In November, Lars Eller was traded. We had the Yaremchuk deal that was rumored for a number of weeks, and we had the Scott Wedgwood deal to Colorado. So we had 4, again, can sit here and pick apart how substantial they were, but we had 4 trades involving NHLers by basically the end of November last year. We also had a coach firing by this point last year. November 19th last season was when the Boston Bruins fired Jim Montgomery. So let me ask you, what do you think we see first this season? A trade of some note or a coach firing?
I think we see a trade first. And I think we're going to see something in Western Canada, whether it's the Oilers finding a goalie or it's the Calgary Flames finally starting to sell off a few pieces, right? I think we see something smaller to start. I think Kadri and Anderson, the big pieces in Calgary, they hold on to it for a little bit to try to raise that stock as team get desperate. But the biggest thing we're going to notice here is I think the trade comes first, because it feels like the coach that's on the biggest hot seat, right? When you look at, like, obviously Huska's fine in Calgary, but then you talk about Andrew Brunette. It just kind of seems status quo in Nashville. It just kind of seemed like, hey, this is what it is. It doesn't feel like it's in a huge risk of him being fired. So that's why I err on the side of a trade being first here.
I think I might go coach firing. I think there might be someone who, again, so many teams are still in the mush that I don't know if anyone's going to be willing to help out anyone. I don't know if there's a lower tier name on the Flames that's going to shake loose in the next, month. And I think maybe a coach will get fired in the next month. There's 2 teams in the NHL right now who have just 2 wins in their last 10 games. And I think one of them, honestly, might surprise some people. So let's keep the coaching conversation going and get into our Insider Notebook for the week with David Pagnotta. It's brought to you by Uber Eats. Always a pleasure to be joined by David Pagnotta from the Fourth Period and the DFO Rundown Insider Edition, which you can find right here on the DFO YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's start with the coaching conversation, Dave. I mentioned Nashville, 2 wins in their last 10, and we had a comment in our YouTube. We said, oh, what about Andre Tournier's seat? They only have 2 wins in their last 10 as well.
Yeah, well, excuse me. I think it's a lot hotter under Bruno's seat than it is with what's going on in Utah. They like the coach there. They're fluttering a little bit in the last little stretch here, but they wanted to be part of the playoff conversation, and they still are. Whereas Nashville wanted to be part of the playoff conversation. They're nowhere near that. I think we're getting to a point, and I mentioned this on the show yesterday with Irf, that I think we're getting to the point now where Nashville is going to entertain a variety of different options and opportunities with respect to the trade market. And I think that's also going to go back to what happens with Andrew Brunette. He's got 1 more year on his contract. Then there's a team option. He might be a casualty of of just the roster. But given the circumstances there in Nashville, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the first guy to kind of fall on the axe. I mean, there are a number of changes that need to happen with Nashville, and they do have some good young pieces, in place, and some good kids in the pipeline after some solid draft picks. But you look at how many free agents they have, you look at how much interest some of their veterans are getting, and just where they're at. I think this is a combo situation in Nashville, and I think they're evaluating pretty much every option.
Yeah, and that's rightfully so. I know Nashville's a different ownership group. Like, they're not one to just waste money on contracts. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But Dave, we do a betting segment every day, and one guy, and I'm not going to say who did it, but one guy picked the Ducks to win last night, and these 2 players to get points in Gauthier and Carlson, and they're both pending RFAs. What do the Ducks do with these guys? Is this close to them, being signed, or what are we going to see here as this plays out?
It doesn't seem like it, unless conversations have picked up significantly in the last 24, 48 hours. My understanding anyways, they're fine just taking things, kind of slow in this regard still. Even with the production and how well these guys are doing, you see it right there. You look at the numbers, it's a combination of the offensive numbers plus the ice time that they're getting. These guys aren't, playing 25 minutes a night. They're not playing 15 minutes a night. Like, they're playing solid minutes for where they're at and what their responsibilities are. And for them to put up these types of numbers in 20 games is definitely impressive. Now, the Ducks have a lot of cap space starting next season. A good chunk of that is going to be attributed to what Gauthier and Carlson want and what they're going to get. That being said, obviously the team would like to go full term with these guys, but are these guys going to be willing to go full term? We've seen a lot of players, Lacombe signed his 8-year extension with the club, but that was before the season started. Now that these guys are putting up these numbers, are you looking at 10, 11, 12 million for Carlson on a 4-year deal, a 5-year deal, or are you going full 8? And I think that's going to be part of the discussion, part of the negotiation once they actually get to that table. But Gauthier is going to make a crap ton of money. Karlsson's going to make more, but that's going to be a big chunk of their cap going towards next season and on. But they've got the space to do that and some. This is a really interesting team right now with how they're playing, how the young kids are playing, and just how much flexibility they have financially to add and insulate this young group.
So my follow-up on that was, as we're talking about young players and a max term extension, my brain jumps to Logan Cooley out in Utah. Like, is 10 million, do you think that's the floor for both of these guys in terms of what they'll be asking for? Because, I mean, hell, if Leo Carlsson puts up a 95-point season and is playing the way he is defensively at his age, it's like 10 better be the floor.
It will be. He's making 8 figures. It's just a matter of what that term is going to be. Like, you could argue, based on his capabilities, 13, 14, 15, if we're going full term. That argument could be made. I've talked to a few people about that around the league. Wouldn't be surprised based on how these guys are going right now. And it's a big figure, and we're not used to these numbers, but we need to be. And I've been saying this since the season started. We need to be more accustomed and more open to the fact that a lot of these guys are going to be making a shit ton of money, more than they've made before. Excuse me. But this is where the market is. This is where things are going. And for a guy like Leo Carlsson, I mean, if he does do what you said and finishes the season with 95 and continues to play well from a two-way perspective, wow, that's a lot. Like that, there's a lot of value there. And then with that Cooley deal, I think that's more of an indicator from an argument side for Gauthier more than Karlsson. Karlsson's going to make more, is what I believe, if he's going full term. And even if he goes shorter term, I think he's going to be in the 8 figures regardless.
Wow. It's just crazy how the landscape has changed with these guys. And they're such complete players early. And then as we start to forecast, as we look into what's going to happen in trade deadline and who's going to be there, I look at Boone Jenner. He's got 10 points in 16 games. Is he like leading the class of someone who's going to be like a targeted during, this season here?
He's going to be up there. Yeah. And they're not shopping him yet. They're not doing anything like that. They want to see where their season's going to go. But they haven't had any meaningful contract discussions either yet. It sounds like maybe some of the younger guys might get priority, like, Fantilli is going to be an RFA and whatnot. But he was a player that attracted a lot of interest last season, and they held off. And he's, battling some health stuff and whatnot. He's doing that now. But if the Jackets don't go on a bit of an upswing here, and, we get to January, February, before and after the Olympic break, if we get to that position and they're still kind of fluttering, they're not really part of the discussion, or they're a little too further out, I'm sure at that point there's going to be some level of contract discussion that gets escalated. And then at that point, they'll figure out what they want to do with him. But he is going to command a lot of interest, not simply because of his capabilities on the ice, but his cap figure. He is a very attractive player financially and on the ice. There are going to be a lot of teams that would love to get their hands on a guy like that. I know we talked on, earlier in the week, like Edmonton, perfect player for a team like the Oilers. He'd be great on the Maple Leafs if they figure themselves out, get their heads out of their you-know-what right now, which is what Berube is trying to make them do. Almost every contender would love to get their hands on this kind of player, and Columbus will probably, if they do end up moving him instead of signing him, probably be in a hell of a position to collect one great return.
Another thing too, like, again, you mentioned that cap hit with the new rules of double retention. Like, again, being able to keep 3.75 once, a lot of teams can still afford that versus, a year ago, but the cap situation is different, is kind of my point. And that's also interesting when it comes to a guy like Alex Tuch, right? Who is a legit top line player who's at 4.75 for this season. So you keep it once and every team in the league can still afford it. What's the update on Tuch and the Sabres?
No update, really, because it's status quo. They haven't really escalated conversations. Nobody's hanging up on the other guy, but they're just not there. And I don't think they've been in the ballpark really for some time, which might be an indicator as to why they haven't had constant communication. but nobody's hanging up on anybody. You know, his agent will gladly pick up a call if Kevin Adams, you know, dials him up, and vice versa. But they're not there yet. There is a lot that still needs to be done in order for that contract to get done. And I think a lot of it also pertains to where the Sabres are, and can they figure themselves out, and you know, go on a bit of a run here. If they can't, and there's still a decent gap, and they're not close to a deal come the new year or a little bit later, just talking about the return Jenner could bring for Columbus. Tuck's going to get that much more out of Buffalo. And again, given where they're at, do you want to take that risk? Like, if the Sabres don't have a good indication that they're going to be able to sign him by the trade deadline, do you want to take the risk of waiting until July? I don't know. I don't think they should. And I don't know if they want to, really. And that's why they brought in some, you know, veteran presence in the management position, like a Yaremchuk to kind of assist, you know, these types of decisions, along with scout. He's been all over the map, but along with scouting and looking at talent across the league. So we'll see kind of what happens there with Buffalo. But, you know, status quo right now, they're not close. They're, you know, they'll pick up a phone call, but I think Buffalo is just right now waiting to see where they're at. And like, he's another player that if he hits the open market, 10, 11 million is not out of the realm of possibility. Would not surprise me. So maybe in his best interest to wait too.
Yeah, you know, especially with the lack of free agents that are going to be there too. So when I think of these guys, they're expiring deals, right, Dave? So the one guy for me that I find interesting and maybe ties in is Kadri. Like, would he be a good fit for Montreal? Like, they've had a bit of a skid here. You know, they need a little more maturity, some veteran presence in that room, and he's still got some time left on his deal.
Yeah, he does. You know, a few more years after this one. For his capabilities, a good cap hit, and the Canadians have space to accommodate a big addition. I believe they're not on his no trade list. I think he would be open to going there. The Canadians, we all know, have interest, as you said. It's I don't think they're there by any stretch yet in terms of the conversation, but. And we know, you know, Calgary's a little bit hesitant. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do. They're still trying to, there's an internal battle as to whether or not now is the time to get going versus, you know, waiting till later in the season or waiting until the offseason. But you look at the Canadians and where they're positioned right now, a 2C of Kadri's caliber is very, very valuable to that club. He brings a ring. He brings that force that he has and the energy that he has, you know, game after game. The Canadians could utilize a piece like that within their top six in their, you know, especially within their second line. You know, Gallagher still brings a lot of energy, and Anderson can throw the body around a little bit. But what you know, Kadri brings, plus his offensive capabilities at the dot, are certainly very valuable. So I think look, the Flames know the Habs have interest, but they're still in a position, Calgary are, where, you know, we're going to wait and see. And the Habs from their side are looking around the market, seeing what other options are available to them. But they've made it known to the Flames, look, when you're ready, give us a call. We want to have a serious conversation.
Dave, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks for popping on. We'll chat again next week.
Can't wait, boys. See ya.
All right, first thing is our poll question. 63% of the people watching think the Leafs are in more danger than the Oilers of missing the playoffs. So I'll sleep great at night now, knowing that the YouTube chat believes. J-Rock was in. Is this trade deadline going to be fire or fizzle? Buddy, it will be fizzle this year. No one has money. The double retention rules. So many teams are in the mix. I just don't. Again, we're going to have a trade deadline special this year. I just don't know how special it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. And again, like we talk on Tuck there, right? And those players, like, it's like the guys that can make it to free agency feel like they hold all the cards this year because of the lack of free agents. And there's a lot of money to go around. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, Ty.
It is a 12-game slate tonight in the NHL, north of 60% of the league in action. So let's get to What Are You Craving, our new segment, which is brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. So, Huts, as you take a peek at the 12 games on the schedule, which one catches your attention? Which matchup are you craving the most?
You know what? For me, it's actually there's a lot of good games tonight. There's a lot to take in, but I like to watch this Panthers Devils game. I just think the Panthers are starting to try to find their game a little more, getting some guys back, playing well. And then you look at the Devils without Jack Hughes. What is their future? Where are they going to be? So I just like to see that storyline play out a little more because there's so many great matchups. I think a lot of teams with the Oilers and the Leafs playing tonight. We've touched on them. The Devils Panthers. I think it's an interesting little post injury update here from the Devils.
Oilers, Bolts, Blue Jackets, Maple Leafs are 2 games to definitely watch in this one. And yeah, both Bedard and Celebrini playing tonight as well. That all ties in nicely to our Bet365 daily bets. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Pat, you took a big swing. Gauthier 5+ shots. You whiffed. I whiffed too, so I can't even laugh.
I mean, he got 4 shots. Is that really a whiff? It was right there. I mean, maybe if we went back and watched, we could go back and watch the tape. Maybe there's one they didn't count for me, but
that's pretty good though to get the 4. I just thought, what's funny, guys. This is a late game, so I'm looking at my phone and it's 2-0 Ducks, and Carlson and Gauthier don't have a point, and they're up. I'm like, it's not going to hit, and then we get the empty net, or it's 4-3 actually. You get the late one, so huge win there. I got to keep rolling here, boys.
Yeah, Carlson picks up an assist on the game winner with under 4 minutes to go. So Hutz is on a heater. He's in first place now. I am still in last, but I will look to bounce back this evening. Here is what I got for tonight's NHL games. Again, I'm sticking with the shot prop parlay. Seth Jones had 2 goals in the Florida Panthers last game. I like this matchup against the Devils for them without Jack Hughes. Give me Seth Jones 2 shots and Connor Bedard 3 shots. It comes in at plus 151. So sticking with the shot prop parlay, Bedard, Jones, both red hot. Pat, what do you got?
I'm going simple today. I've got an anytime point for Matthew Schaefer plus 125. He's rolling right now, and I'm sure in conversations with, Team Canada, potentially some options there. So I'm sure his confidence is sky high. He's got 2 goals. I guess that would be 4 points in his last 5 games. So I like this one at plus 125. Hutz?
Ooh, I like both your bets today too. I don't usually admit that very often, but I'm going with the Montreal Canadiens money line and Montreal to score first. So the Caps are in town. They're on a back-to-back, and I think Montreal needs to be a desperate team here tonight. I think they start on time. They come out flying. So look for that to hit. Let's stay hot, boys, and you guys just try to catch me. That's all I can say.
As I was sitting here and looking at Bet365, I was tempted to change. The over-under for Tampa Edmonton tonight is 6. Not even 6.5, just 6. Tampa might put up 6 on Calvin Pickard alone. Listen, Edmonton lit up Logan Thompson last night for 4. So I think the over tonight, Edmonton and Tampa, is probably a pretty sweet play too.
Yeah, that would be that. I'll be doing my starting goalies Bet365 today too for daily fate. Maybe I'll steal that thought. I like that. I usually go with the under, but it does seem like that's a low-hanging fruit, Ty.
Yeah. And again, even if they are scared of playing Pickard and play Skinner again on a second straight night, the over's hitting in that one. J-Rock is in. He says, I'd trust you more, Tyler, if you had some glasses on. I will not apologize for my good eyesight, by the way. I've never needed glasses in my life. I see great. No one's ever accused me of being blind or anything like that. But we can wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. Hutz, the weird injuries in the NHL just keep on racking up. Eetu Luostarinen is out week to week after a burn during a barbecue accident.
Oh, that is tough news. I've never heard of a barbecue accident around the hockey. Obviously, I guess who knows what he did here. I don't know the whole story on how he got hurt, but I do remember playing with Jake Allen one time, and he was cutting up a banana for his daughter, and he cut his finger pretty bad, and he missed a couple of days. So the food in the kitchen, boys, stay out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? Stay off the barbecue. Be safe out there.
Here's a little free plug for all of our NHL friends. Uber Eats exists. You don't need to cut your hand at a barbecue. You don't need to be cutting your hand at a team dinner. Stay in your hotel, wrap yourself in plastic or in bubble wrap, and just order Uber Eats every single night. But that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. I got Oilers at 5:30. I got Buffalo Bills on the Thursday nighter. I'm rocking my Bills sweater. I'll have Uber Eats dialed up by probably about 5:15 this evening. I got a good night ahead of me, Hutz.
Yeah, there you go. All the teams are playing. I hope things go well for you today, buddy. I know there's a lot of pressure on all your teams, but hopefully tomorrow's a happy Friday here.
Yeah, hopefully I'm smiling tomorrow. Darren Pang going to be our guest tomorrow. Going to talk some Blackhawks with Panger. So excited for that. Enjoy your Thursday, everybody. We'll see you back right here tomorrow, noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.